Well, this is a good morning, and I'm excited for our speaker this morning. Our speaker's name is Michael Thies, and before I get into the introduction, I'd like to invite Michael to introduce your sweetheart to us.
This is my beautiful wife, Alyssa. We've been married today a year and a half.
Michael came here from Garden City, Kansas, to come to the AIM program in 2009. He served in Troy, New York with James Glasscock. He was influenced to come to SIBI from one of our graduates named Ryan Davis, who I think helped to explain to him that at his age it'd probably be maybe a little bit wiser to come to AIM first and then through the 2-year school, and that's what he did. He believes that AIM and the 2-year school have prepared him for a lifetime of ministry, and that's exactly what he was looking for. When he explains what some of the joys were over these last couple of years, he says number one was getting married to Alyssa, and then just the blessings of being here in this place. Some of the struggles that he has had, he said, is just maintaining his spiritual health, as well as watching his wife struggle with just various health issues. He describes maybe some of the godly qualities in his life that have developed while he's been here. Is just that he is dedicated, he's a hard worker, kind, compassionate, a learner, a teacher, and slow to anger. I wonder how many of us can see all of those in him. After graduating, Michael and Alyssa plan to go through the School of Missions in August, where he is on a team going to Lesotho in southern Africa, where his goal there is to help to equip the leadership in the church there, as well as eventually someday to be a part of helping to begin a school of preaching there in Lesotho. His scripture reading this morning is in Matthew chapter 9, verses 11 through 13. And this is what that says. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard it, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I came not to call the righteous, but sinners." My impression of you, Michael, is I remember when you came to AIM, I remember one of the things you said when you were about to go to Troy, New York. One of your dreams, I think, was you said that you wanted to find a master craftsman, that you wanted to learn from someone like that, their trade. And I think you've done that here, in a way. I would describe you as someone who is genuine. I think someone who has a pure heart. Someone who is selfless. And I think about where you're going to Lesotho. And I think the people there, the Basotho people, I think they're going to be watching and they're going to be looking for someone to see, does your life match what you say you believe? And I think for you, Michael, that's an easy answer. And I say, yes, it does. And so this morning, I'm excited for you and for us and to be able to say, come preach the word.
Thank you, Chris. I want to start off this morning by thanking the faculty and the staff of this school for all the hard work and the life that you have poured into every lesson that you've taught us and prepared us to go and to be good ministers of the gospel. And I want to thank you for that. The topic that I'm going to be addressing this morning is ministering to the hurting. Because all of us here are ministers. That is who we are, and the people we're going to, the vast majority are hurting people. So this is a lesson that is all-encompassing. In fact, the lesson is so large and it's such a broad topic that I have limited the topic down to ministering to the hurting, the chronically ill. because this is something in a group of society that is overlooked so often. And in fact, there are probably a majority of us in this room who are suffering from that as well. I think the thing that stands out to me the most outside of my own experience is some of the statistics. Half of all Americans suffer from a chronic illness. 96% of them, you would not know it if you looked at them. 60% of the chronically ill are not in the old folks' home. They are young. They are from 18 years of age all the way up to 64. 75% of all marriages that the chronically ill enter into end in divorce. And that should grab our attention. That should show the need that is there for us to be aware of this group of people and to be ministering to them. And also the fact that 15 to 20% of those are higher risk of chronically ill of depression among the chronically ill. That should concern us. That should grab our attention. That should be the rallying cry for why we are being aware of this percentage of the population. Before I get there, I need to let you know where I'm coming from in this lesson. Not only have I been married to a wonderful woman for the last year and a half who is chronically ill and has suffered from chronic infections and a low immune system, but 2 years ago, I am ashamed of the way that I acted and of the mindset that I had. I was ignorant. And I know the faculty and staff of this school understand this issue, but I wonder so often, without experiencing it, how little compassion sometimes we have towards the issue. Because I know that's where I was at. So this morning, I'm going to be speaking out of that as we look at the life of Christ and as we walk in His shoes to learn how He ministered to those who are suffering from this kind of condition. If you want to follow along, Matthew 9 will be the Cliff Notes version for those of you who want to get through it quickly. The extended edition is Mark 5, and the doctor's view is Luke 8. But this morning I want to invite you to walk in the shoes and to put yourself in the shoes of two individuals who are hurting in the story, and to look at how it is that Christ reaches out and meets the needs of those people. The first person we meet is Jairus. There he goes. Jairus is a synagogue leader. He is a wealthy man, and he has a beloved daughter, an only daughter. She's around the age of 12, and all of a sudden, she comes down with a sickness. They call in the doctors, and the condition is obvious. The situation is clear. She will not recover. She will die. Jairus, in a moment of desperation, leaves his daughter's bedside. He leaves his wife, and he goes because he's heard that Christ is in the area. We do not know how he heard about this. We don't know how he found out where Christ was at. We don't know if he searched all over town and finally found him. But eventually, he found Christ by the lakeside, teaching the Pharisees and John's disciples. But Jairus doesn't care. He throws himself at the feet of Christ, and he begs him, he pleads with him, "Please come heal my daughter. She is dying. I need you to come heal her. You are the only hope she has." Christ does the only thing he can do, and he grants her his request, and he begins to follow. Pushing through the crowd, Jairus is trying to think of the fastest way home, because he's all too aware that every moment that he is away from her, she is closer to death. He's pushing through the crowd. He's probably a little annoyed at everyone who's pushing in on him and not making way so that he can get to his house. And all of a sudden he realizes that Christ is not right behind him. He looks over his shoulder to see Christ turned around, asking, "Who touched me?" That must have been annoying for Jairus. That must have been something that frustrated him as he was so desperate to have Jesus come and heal his child. But Jesus has ceased to allow time to become an issue as he turns around and he asks, "Who touched me?" Now we must step into the shoes of another lady, another person who is hurting. This lady has been suffering from a chronic bleeding condition for the last 12 years. We don't know if she was ever married. If she was, she's now divorced. If she was not, she cannot be. Her father may have been well-to-do. Maybe if she was married, her husband had some money. But by this point, she has used every dime of it trying to get better. Because her condition not only makes her weak from the loss of blood, but it also separates her from the society because she is ceremonially unclean. She cannot go and worship with the people of God. She is more than likely bumped into people accidentally who were going to the temple, who were going to the synagogue, who got frustrated at her because they were inconvenienced by her condition. They were inconvenienced by the fact that they are now ceremonially unclean, and they can't do what they had planned. She has lost everything. Her reputation, her position in society, possibly her family, because no one comes to get Christ for her. And she approaches from the rear. She reaches out in a moment of hope, knowing that only Christ can save her, and touches the edge of his garment. And then she stops. She realizes that she has been healed, while the crowd goes by her like a flood of people, unknowing, uncaring, not realizing that she's even there, just like normal. But she has not escaped the notice of one. Christ notices that she's there. In fact, he knows her story. He wills her to be healed when she touches him. And then he turns around and he invites. He doesn't accuse, he doesn't demand, he invites her. Who touched me? Just like his father in Genesis, who said, Adam, where are you? It wasn't that God did not know where Adam was, just like Jesus did not know who this woman was. He simply invites her. Who touched me? Come forward, tell your story. Realizing that she will not escape the crowd, she comes forward and she falls at his feet, not knowing what the crowd thinks, not knowing what his response will be. Will he get mad? Will he condemn her for her actions of coming to him secretly? Will she get in trouble for the fact that she has now made this entire crowd unclean? She tells her entire story. She tells how for the past 12 years she has suffered, how she has lost everything, how at the hands of the doctors not only has she lost her money, but she has lost her health, and it has become worse. And then she tells how she has touched him and she is now healed. And Christ, stepping in and talking before the crowd can say a word, calls her daughter. The only time we have Christ making such a statement to someone who is of age like this. We don't know her age, but she is older. And Christ calls her daughter. He speaks to her heart. He speaks to her, and he tells her that it is okay, that what she has done is right. And he sends her on her way in peace. While he is doing this, Jairus' friends come to get him. They tell him the bad news. His daughter is dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore, they say. It's hopeless. Give up. Come home. Bury your daughter. Mourn with your wife. Don't bother anyone with this. Leave Christ alone. But Christ steps into the situation, and he breathes hope and he breathes life in a way that only our Savior can. And he invites him to believe. He invites him to have hope, and they continue on to the house. As they get closer, they can hear the funeral already in full swing. The professional mourners have arrived, and they are in full wail. More than likely received and got by the friends. The friends have gone and brought them to the house. Jesus, knowing the situation of the family, knowing what they need, he steps between, once again, the family and the helpers, and he gets the crowd out of the house. He leaves most of his disciples outside, and he invites 3 in with him as he begins to minister to this hurting family. Jesus goes and he sits beside the bed. And he takes the little girl's hand in his, and he invites her back to this world. And she gets up and she begins to walk around the room. And Christ then proceeds to minister to the hearts of the family. He tells them that he does not need anything from them. Simply take care of the girl, feed the girl, and he's on his way. In a matter of an hour, maybe two, Christ has dealt with two almost impossible situations with grace that we can only dream of, and has breathed life and hope into two very difficult situations. But how do we apply this to our lives today? How can we take this and learn from Christ's example, and how can we apply this to our lives? Well, first, let me debunk one false belief that we have to choose between helping the hurting and building up the leadership that is within the works where we're going. We can minister to those who are up-and-coming leaders by bringing them with us as we minister to the hurting, so that they can see what it means to be a minister in action. We don't have to choose one or the other. We must do both, because that is what Christ did. We must realize that sickness affects the entire family. In the case of Jairus and his family, they are undone by the fact that their daughter is dying. They are desperate and they are seeking help, they are seeking hope, and they go to the only one they can find it in Christ. In the case of the woman, she has been abandoned. She has no friends to go and get Christ for her. She does not have a father to come and get Christ for her. So Christ calls her daughter. Sickness affects the entire family, not just the person who is dealing with the illness. Though the person who is dealing with the illness is dealing with it in a much larger way, it is affecting the entire family, and we must minister to both. We must learn that we cannot compare hurts. At this game, there is no winners. By saying that somebody else out there has a worse condition or is dealing with something worse, you're not helping either person. Both are suffering. Both need your help. Both need your hope. By telling them that, well, you're not hurting as bad as so-and-so, doesn't help either one. We must breathe hope and help into their situation by giving them empathy and sympathy and encouragement. For Christ doesn't compare. In fact, he doesn't even get mad at the woman when he interrupts him on his way to heal this girl who is dying. We would take and say, you've been suffering for 12 years, you can suffer a few more hours while I go and deal with this family and prevent her from dying. But Christ doesn't do that. He deals with both on the same level simultaneously. We must come to the understanding as well that sickness can separate one from God's people and possibly even God. This woman was ceremonially unclean for 12 years. She had not been in a community of faith for 12 years, not by choice, but by have to. And we must realize and speak to that and help people through those times and not pull out the old manual and say, well, you have to attend so many Sundays in a row in order to be faithful. Some people can't do that, and we have to be willing to be friendly to them and let them know, we missed you. Not saying, well, where were you last Sunday? We missed you. But saying, where were you? We missed you. How can we help? How is things going? And encouraging them and not being accusatory. In many ways, in many respects, sickness is a living death. This is a quote that Matt Hadley told me when he was quoting his wife. So there's quite a few people removed from an exact quote. But it's very true. From the fact that money is stretched to the limits, from the fact that relationships are put on hold and separation begins, from the fact that the reputation begins to wane or self-confidence begins to happen. People are destroyed by things like this, and we cannot compare their hurts. We can't say, well, your condition is this, and I know someone else with that condition. We need to be aware and speak hope to that, because they're going through this process that's very much can be considered a living death. And we need to be speaking to that to help them, not to hurt. This is, I think, one of the most important things that I have had to learn over the year. And one of the things I think the church often accidentally does. Because as preachers, we think that we are doing something by speaking. I mean, we get paid, right, to go and fill a pulpit and to give a lessons a lot of times, and we feel like that's a lot of our job. But we cannot play the role of a physician. As much as I wish we still had the gift of healing today, we don't. And we must not, in a 10-minute conversation or in a year-long relationship with them, begin to speak cures into their life after they've had doctor after doctor either tell them there's no hope or tell them that this is what's going on, this is what you need to do. We don't have the magic cure, and we must not try to. Our job, our role is to speak to their hurt and to speak hope and life to their soul and to their emotions, not to heal their body. Not that that means that we negate helping them on a physical level. There are times when they need help. But our job and our role is not to heal them. Our job is not to fix them. Our job is to minister to them on the deepest level. Our job is to support them, to encourage them, to love them, and to encourage and restore them. The overall principle, and this applies to things beyond just chronic illness, and that is putting ourselves in their shoes. What do they need? The church is good at doing something. Well, I'm good at cooking, so I'm going to bring them food. Okay, that's great. But do they need food? Is the food that you're getting ready to cook, that you have mastered this dish, something that they can even eat? Is it going to cause them health issues? Is it something that they just really don't like? We have to understand they're in crisis mode, and they're staying in crisis mode 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year in some cases. The church can't necessarily stick with them the entire time, but we need to be aware of that and be ministering to that. We don't need to say, well, this is the time when I can come by and this is the dish that I prepare and you're just going to have to deal with that. I'm going to just drop it off at your doorstep. The carpenter might say, well, I'm good at building houses. I'm going to serve them that way. I'm going to build them a house. Well, do they need a house? Are you building it in a position that's going to fit their needs? Is the house itself going to fit their needs? The only way we can know that is by going and talking with them and finding out, what do you need? And like Christ, becoming an in-between between the well-to-do helpers and what the family actually needs. Coordinating and finding out, what time do you need food if you need food? Coordinating, what do you need? Do you need somebody to come by and just encourage you and talk with you? Well, how many people can come over at once? Do you need a call ahead? Things like that are critical in these moments of need so that you're meeting their need, not just doing something. Doing something is no good. Think about it in this way. If you knew that you had a paper due, let's say for Victor, and you just turned in a paper and you wrote it on youth and family ministry, that was not what Victor requested. It might be a good paper. It might have no spelling errors, which would be a miracle for me, but is that what he has requested? Is that the purpose of the assignment? We have to meet their need where it is, not just do something. So put yourself in their shoes and encourage them how they need it, because they're already hurting, they're already suffering. So here's my question to you. As we look at Christ, as we follow Him, how will you try to minister to the hurting? How will you step into their lives and breed help and hope and not just do something?